In today's episode, you're going to find out how one man turned his life around by a simple choice of giving up meat and dairy. Stick around because you're in for a treat.
Are you ready to live the life you deserve? Do you want to feel vibrantly healthy and reach your optimal weight without dieting while being kind to animals and the planet? Then you're in the right place at the right time. Welcome to Plant-Based Eating for Health with your host, certified plant-based nutritionist, Kathleen Gage.
Well, Paul, I am so excited to have you on the Plant-Based Eating for Health show because I know that you've been a vegan for 30 years, which is almost unheard of. A lot of people, they're a year into it, 2 years into it, myself, 3 years into it. What made you go vegan?
Kathleen, I'm really thrilled to be talking with you. And I became vegan in 1993, so nearly 30 years ago. And let me tell you, back then, people didn't know what the word meant. They didn't know how to pronounce it. If anything, they thought you were from Las Vegas. But I went vegan primarily out of a love for animals. I didn't really know much. I knew that animals were not being treated well, and that led me to become vegetarian. And then I started writing to some of the animal welfare organizations for information. And when I say writing, there's no email or anything, right? Mm-hmm. I'm writing snail mails to them. And they sent me things like videos. Keep in mind, there's no YouTube. So they're sending like a VHS tape, which is, for those of you who aren't young or aren't old enough, that's like a rectangular piece of plastic that you put into a box back in the early 90s. And it produced a video. It was like YouTube kind of. But so I would watch these videos, and I didn't know anything about vegan. I was calling it vegan, in fact. But I kind of thought I thought of being a vegan as almost like holding your breath. Like if you can hold your breath for a long time, but if you do it too long, you'll die. And that's what I thought. I was like, maybe you can go without any animal products for some amount of time, but if you do it too long, you'll die. But what really helped to push me over the edge was not only meeting these people who I learned were vegans, not vegans, but also I read an interview with Carl Lewis. Now, he back then was he was like the Usain Bolt of that era. He was the fastest man on the planet, U.S. Olympic gold. He was like, I had a big poster of him. He was like my hero. And he was vegan. I couldn't believe it. I thought, not only is it possible to be vegan, but this guy is like the best athlete in the world, in my view, was, excelling on a vegan diet. And so I thought, if Carl Lewis can do this, I'm going to do it. Now, I didn't do it because I wanted to get better at athletics. I did it because I was concerned about the treatment of animals. But Carl Lewis was like basically a social proof for me that it could be done. And I was very pleased to see, surprised to see also, but very pleased to see that Silk Soy Milk now is using Carl Lewis as a spokesperson for them, and he's on their cartons of soy milk. I didn't know people still knew who Carl Lewis was today, but I saw him a big emblazoned on my Silk Soy Milk carton. So I guess some people must know who he is. So I'm glad.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So, it's so interesting because you look at some of the people that have been vegan for a long time. And in some ways, it's kind of shocking. It's like, really, they are? And performance goes up. Now, I know your wife is vegan also, and she is an author. Tell us a little bit about how you met your wife. Were you vegan before you met her? What's the story there?
Yeah, I live in my wife's shadow. So I'm like the guy who, when somebody recognizes her at a vegan restaurant, they come up and they ask me to take a photograph of her with them. So that's like my main role in our marriage, I think. Prior to the pandemic, it was like taking photos of her with other people. But her name is Toni Okamoto. Her brand is called Plant-Based on a Budget. And that's also the name of what she considers her best-selling cookbook. She's written 3 cookbooks. But to answer your question, Toni and I were both vegan before we ever met each other. But I'll tell you a funny story about how we met, because we were both at a plant-based conference in 2015. And I walked up to her and started chatting, said, "Hi, I'm Paul." And she said, "Oh, actually, we've met before." And I said, "Really? I'm sorry." And I presumed it must have been like maybe at the end of a speech I'd given or something that I could be forgiven for, not remembering. And she goes, "Yeah, we met at a concert 3 years ago." And I said, "Oh." And I didn't want to lie. So I said, I remember being at that concert, but I don't remember us meeting. She said, "Oh, yeah, we had a whole conversation." And I said, "Man, I am really sorry that I don't remember it." And then to dig the grave a little bit deeper, she said, "Yeah, and then I looked you up on Facebook and I sent you a Facebook friend request and you didn't reply to it." And I thought, I just thought, wow, I am horrible. And so anyway, we then connected by Facebook, and we didn't become a couple then. We didn't become a couple for another year and a half or so. We just became friends. But anyway, we got together and then got married, and now we've been married for a few years. So it was a good thing that we were both at that conference.
Excellent. Well, we'll make sure to put links to her books in the show notes. Nice. And I want to remind people, this is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health, and I'm talking with Paul Shapiro. He is the owner of the Better Meat Co. And actually, if you go to Vegan Visibility Podcast, you'll hear his interview there. And now, Paul, during the pandemic, I know that you did some things to keep yourself basically entertained and to get through the tough times of being isolated. You're into running, and you're obviously into other athletic endeavors. So tell us about what you did during the pandemic to stay healthy, to stay on track, and to keep your head on straight.
I don't know if my head stayed on straight, Kathleen, but I will tell you, I am a creature of habit. Like, I do the same things pretty much every day. And so that includes early mornings doing some type of a workout. So when the gyms closed at the beginning of the pandemic, it was like devastating to me. I was like, what am I going to do? I don't have a gym to go to. I don't know what I'm going to do. So in short, first, my wife and I adopted a dog. That was very nice, so I could walk him more. But I took up long distance running again, and I used to be into long distance running much more. I did a marathon back in 2013. I've probably done a couple dozen half marathons. And so a buddy of mine who is like an elite vegan runner, his name is Jed Solis, and he's like sponsored by a shoe company. He's like a truly elite runner. Mm-hmm. He started training me virtually and telling me what to do. And he was just telling me like, okay, do this tomorrow, do this the next day. And he got me way faster and running way longer than I was. And so I started getting back into long distance running, and he ended up helping me achieve through his prescriptions for me a PR for my half marathon time. So I got my fastest half marathon of my life during the pandemic. And then he trained me for a 5K, and I got my fastest 5K time of my life. Then he trained me for a 1 mile, and I was very happy that even though I'm in my 40s, he helped me to achieve running a sub 6 minute mile. So I'd never in my life run a sub 6 minute mile, and he helped me do it. Now, just barely, it was a 5:58, but still, I take it.
You know what? That's sub 6. We'll take it. We'll take it.
I took it. And so now he's been training me on much shorter distances, like 100 meters and 400 meters. And he's gotten me down to 67 seconds for 400 meters. So it's just over a 4-minute pace for that quarter mile. But I got a lot to do. He's still faster than I am at everything. But I've basically been training myself with my friend Jed to compete at all these different lengths, whether it's 100 meters or a mile or 5K or half marathon.
I love it. Well, actually, I started running in my 60s. I did my first full marathon at 60 or 61, and
wow, nice.
I was doing a lot of running during the pandemic, and then a few weeks ago, I broke my wrist and had to have surgery, and it was just a freak accident. And it's so interesting, Paul, because when I went to emergency, they took me in an ambulance. It was at an outdoor event where the producer didn't do their due diligence around the vendors, and one of the tents got a gust of wind, hit me in the back of the head, and I literally fell onto the cement. And they checked for brain bleed, the whole 9 yards. Never once did I pass out, didn't get a concussion by the grace of God. Nice. That was amazing. But I did break my wrist and had to have surgery. But it was so interesting where when I went through the whole process of talking to nurses and doctors, every single one said, "Are you on a blood thinner?" And I said, "No, I'm not on any meds at all." And they're like, "But at your age," because I'm 67, and like, "At your age, you should be." And it's like, no, I shouldn't be. The natural way is not to be. So what I'm hearing you say is that by being vegan and really pushing yourself athletically, that you can really excel. A lot of people don't realize that. So for people who are, maybe they know their health needs some improvement, what would your recommendations be for people to actually start eating healthier through plant-based eating and then exercise?
Yeah, well, first, congrats on all of your running success. It's amazing. And when you just said you were 67, I'm looking at you here. My jaw is on the ground. I can't believe that.
You're my new best friend.
I truly, it's not merely flattery. I really am surprised by that. So my hat is off to you, Kathleen. But anyway, I think, just do it is the best slogan. I know it's a slogan of like a major brand, but it really is a good slogan in that people fear like that they're not going to be able to accomplish what it is. And we are the barrier for ourselves. Our mental blocks are what are holding us back. You're 67 years old and you're running long distance, if I'm not mistaken. Mm-hmm. I'm now 42 and just ran a sub 6-minute mile. Like, I really believe that many of the barriers that we're facing are self-imposed, and that if we can free our minds to realize that actually we can accomplish a lot more, then there's so much more that we could do. So granularly, what I suggest is making sure that you're working out at least 6 days a week. Not the same thing every time, not running every time, but I would mix it up. So you're doing either weightlifting or running, or doing different distances or different paces, so that your body is accustomed to lots of different varied exercise. I don't think it's good to run the same distance at the same pace every single time. You need some diversity for your body to have that. And what being plant-based does is it really helps you not only to avoid things that are going to weigh you down, but it helps you recover faster. And so if you're eating a whole foods plant-based diet, I don't mean the junk food vegan diet, but I mean a whole food, meaning, you're avoiding processed foods, you're not eating much oil and so on. So eating like whole fruits, whole vegetables, whole grains, you really do recover faster between workouts, and that enables you to do more, and that enables you to get faster or bigger or stronger or whatever it is that you're seeking to do. So there's a great new book that just came out on the topic called The Plant-Based Athlete by Robert Cheek and Matt Fraser, which I recommend. It was a New York Times bestseller, and I read it and actually learned a lot from it. So and it's inspirational stories about very good plant-based athletes, and
Excellent.
it shows like, that really whatever sport you're in, being plant-based is probably going to be helpful for you with it.
Excellent. So The Plant-Based Athlete, I'll definitely pick up that book. And your wife has 3 books. Out of her 3 books, which would you say is your favorite?
Oh, I love Plant-Based on a Budget. I'm a cheap guy, so I always am looking for ways to avoid spending money. So Plant-Based on a Budget is both the name of my wife's brand and the name of that particular cookbook. So I do recommend it. And she's run a marathon herself as well. And it's funny, you talk about both your own running and my wife Toni's running. And I was actually just reading an interview with Catherine Switzer, who famously ran the Boston Marathon in 1967, at a time when women were not allowed to run in these races. But many people think women were banned from the race. It's not true. At that time in 1967, people just assumed, like the scientific consensus was that women were incapable of running 26 miles. So they weren't even in the race because nobody presumed that they could even do it. And when she ran, and she was famously attacked by the race organizer and tried to force her out of the race, who unsuccessfully tried to force her out of the race, she still ran it, and she proved that women could indeed run 26.2 miles. And after that, the Athletic Association in control of the Boston Marathon, after Catherine Switzer did that, explicitly banned women from the race. And it wasn't until the 1970s that they started allowing women to run in the Boston Marathon. So, think about another like mental barrier that people had. They just had this thought, there's no way that women could possibly run 26 miles. Totally absurd to us today. But back then, that's just what people thought. And mad respect to Catherine Switzer for breaking that barrier and showing people that how nonsensical that view was.
Absolutely. And she's still alive, if I'm not mistaken. And didn't she recently run another marathon? And she's how old is she?
Oh, she is getting, first of all, yes, she is alive. Second, I have met her, I'm very proud to say. It's not like I personally know her, but I met her at a book signing. And she does still run a lot. And in fact, the Boston Marathon, to their credit, has retired her bib number. So bib number 261, nobody can run as runner 261 in the Boston Marathon anymore, because that was her bib number. And, she got down, like at that time in 67, like she was running, I think like a 4:20 marathon, but she eventually became extremely fast and ran sub 3 hour marathons.
That's incredible.
So, yeah. What a amazing person and athlete.
Well, you mentioned something about being a healthy vegan and healthy plant-based eater, because there is a lot of confusion. People think if you're vegan, you're automatically healthy. And there are so many junk food vegans. And so what is the distinction between a healthy vegan and an unhealthy vegan?
Sure. Well, first and foremost, I'm happy for people to eat vegan because it's helping to prevent cruelty to animals. It's better for the environment. So, I don't want to set a bar too high here. I really believe that eating, plant-based, overeating meat, eggs, or dairy is a wonderful thing that should be applauded. And I certainly eat my fair share of things that are not the healthiest as well. So I don't think anybody should try to hold themselves to some puritanical standard. At the same time, what you're saying is true, Kathleen. Merely because it's vegan does not mean that it's healthy. Obviously, Coke and potato chips are vegan, but it doesn't mean that if you eat a lot of Coke and potato chips that it's thing for you to consume. So
Right.
I try to follow what Dr. Michael Greger calls the evidence-based diet. So he wrote a fantastic book called How Not to Die, and he goes through all of the major killers of Americans and what the evidence shows will reduce your risk of that. And basically what it comes down to is try to eat as much whole plant foods as you can. Whole fruits, whole vegetables, whole grains, beans, nuts, seeds. Never eat anything that has oil or added sugar, but it does mean try to limit those foods. And that's what I try to do. I try to eat as much of a whole foods plant-based diet as I can, and my body feels better because of it. I feel like I'm faster than many of the people who I run with, who are often 2 decades younger than I am. So I feel good about eating a whole foods plant-based diet. And there are certain things that I do that I think are really important. Like I do a turmeric shot every day. So I take, I don't like buy turmeric shots. I just buy bulk turmeric and pour it in water and drink it. But I think that's really good for anti-inflammation. And then I also like to consume a lot of pumpkin seeds because they're very high in iron and zinc, which are 2 things that vegans often should be a little bit attentive to. I don't think you necessarily need a supplement with them, but pumpkin seeds are really like a superfood in the vegan world because they are not only high in protein, but they are really high in zinc and iron. So those are some of the things that I'm trying to do.
Excellent. Excellent. So, how do you advise people to actually, like, let's say they want to go vegan, they want to go plant-based, and their kitchen is filled with garbage foods. What's your recommendation to people?
Give it away. I wouldn't throw it away, but you got a lot of friends. You work with a lot of people who eat meat probably. If you have an office that you're going into, bring it in and give it to them. So give it away. I give a lot of food to homeless people even, who are oftentimes very grateful for it. But the problem is if you have the food there, you're going to eat it. Like none of us have this like willpower. Like I know if there's vegan ice cream in my freezer, I'm going to eat it. Like there's no point. However, if I don't have it in the freezer, I'm not sitting around thinking, oh, I wish I had it. I'm not thinking about it at all. So I try to create a food environment for myself that has only the foods that I want to be eating there. And then if I am going to have something that I think is like a treat type of food, I will try to make it a little bit difficult for myself to get it. Like I'll put it in like a high place, something where, not prohibitive, but, I need to get a step ladder to go get it.
Right,
and
right.
that may be enough to like help me gain the willpower of like, that's a pain. I don't want to do that. And so my friend, Milena Esherick, who's a psychologist and an expert in the behavior of dietary change, recommends basically like hiding food from yourself and put it in inconvenient places. And so I've tried to implement her tips and tricks to help myself eat healthier.
Well, for me, I used to be a major sugar addict, and anything like if I got a box of donuts, I ate the entire box. I was about 50 pounds heavier than I am now. So, going vegan has been a really good thing for me. And it's amazing because my taste buds have changed. I never thought I'd get over the sugar addiction, and I have no desire for cake. I have no desire for donuts. I want a good piece of fruit. And, so when people say, oh, I could never give it up because I'm so addicted to it, it's like, give yourself some time and you may be amazed. And I want to remind people that I'm talking with Paul Shapiro of the Better Meat Co., and he's talking about his health protocol. But on Vegan Visibility, you can hear his interview about his company. And very briefly, share with people what your company is about and how it's helping the animals.
Sure, Kathleen. Thank you. It's very kind of you. And I agree, your palate will change. Your palate will change when you stop eating the foods that you're eating. You will start coming to crave the new foods that you're eating. So that's happened to me on a number of occasions. However, what the Better Meat Co. does is offer ingredients as a business-to-business provider. So we don't have a brand that you're going to find on the supermarket shelf. We're an ingredients company that utilizes fermentation to make the next generation of plant-based meat ingredients. Because right now, most plant-based meat is either made from pea or wheat or soy or some combination thereof. We're offering a great option, which is a mycoprotein that we're making through fermentation that is a whole food that's high in iron, high in protein, high in fiber, and naturally contains vitamin B12 that you can utilize to make plant-based meat with. So that's what we're offering to food companies if they want to increase their game when it comes to plant-based meat manufacturing. We're a great solution.
Excellent. And how do people find you, Paul?
If you go to bettermeat.co, again, that's bettermeat.co, you can contact us through there.
Excellent. Excellent. And in closing, what are your final thoughts for people?
Well, every time we sit down to eat, we're making choices. We're making choices about what type of world we want to live in. Eating is not just some type of a neutral act where it doesn't matter what we're eating. It really does matter. And so what I would suggest is, in addition to making our food choices better than they currently are, you don't have to let the perfect be the enemy of the good, but to continually seek progress and to do better, to think about how we can use our lives to address some of the most pressing challenges that are facing humanity and the planet right now, especially that we're raising billions of animals for food, which is at the heart of so many of the ills that we're facing. And we can create new technologies that help to reduce our reliance on animals. Just in the same way that we don't use carrier pigeons anymore because telegraphs were invented and eventually telephones, just in the same way that we don't use horses because cars were invented, we can create technologies that will free us from our exploitation of animals. And I wrote a book on the topic. It's called Clean Meat. It's all about that topic. So hope you'll check that out. And I'd love to hear from you if you're interested in getting involved in that industry.
Excellent. And what's the name of the book again?
The book is called Clean Meat, How Growing Meat Without Animals Will Revolutionize Dinner in the World.
Okay, we'll make sure that link is in the show notes. And Paul, this has been delightful. Thank you for your time. And I encourage people, go check out bettermeat.co and check out Paul's book, check out his wife Toni's books, and we'll put all the links below, and go out and do what is right for the animals, the planet, and for your health. This is Kathleen Gage with Plant-Based Eating for Health, wishing you a great day.
Thank you for your commitment to an ethical life through plant-based food choices. The kind of choices that are kind to your body, the environment, and most of all, animals. Be sure to leave a review and rating of the Plant-Based Eating for Health podcast show.